My name is Davy. I have a wife whom I married about a year ago, and her name is Joyce. Joyce and I were classmates in junior high school, but at the time we had very little contact. However, we met again at our coming-of-age reunion and happened to be seated next to each other, which deepened our friendship and led to a relationship. Joyce has a reserved and gentle personality, and although she is not a talkative person, she always smiles and listens to my stories because I like to talk. The time I spent with Joyce was so warm and peaceful that it was a natural progression for us to start thinking about a future together. In our 4th year of dating, at the age of 24, we got married. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary. I am an ordinary office worker and Joyce is a nurse. After work on Friday night, we met up at the restaurant where I proposed.
Sorry, I'm a little late because I had to change in the restroom at the department store.
About 10 minutes after our meeting time, Joyce showed up wearing a beige one-piece dress. She always wears plain clothes to work, so she must have changed after leaving the office. I'm fine. Shall I come in? Of course I like Joyce in everyday life, but after a long time, I feel a little nervous and elated to meet her outside and see her all dressed up. The food and drinks are just as delicious as they were a year ago, and I find it even more enjoyable than usual to spend time with her, just the two of us talking. I am very happy that we are able to celebrate our first anniversary on good terms like this, and I give her a bouquet of flowers, albeit a small one, to express my feelings. It was a bouquet full of hazelnuts, Joyce's favorite flower. I'm not usually one to do romantic things, but a celebrity couple mentioned bouquets on their anniversary as the secret to their happiness. So I decided to try something like that. It was embarrassing, but I was really happy to see Joyce's happy face. Keep up the good work. We both laughed and said this to each other, and our anniversary dinner was over. Filled with a sense of great happiness, I thought that as long as I was with Joyce, we could overcome anything together, even if our family grew or if we faced great hardships. But the big test came sooner than we had expected, as if it was going to test us. It was about a month after our first wedding anniversary. I was working in sales, and after the last business meeting was over around 3 p.m., I called my boss and was told that I could go home directly. Since Joyce was off today, I was happy to be able to go home early, so I drove my car in a hurry. I thought about sending a message to Joyce during a red light on the way home. But then I thought, I want to surprise her by leaving suddenly. I bought Joyce's favorite cream puffs for the two of us at a convenience store, and we were about 10 minutes away from the intersection. I saw a familiar face right next to the traffic light where I had stopped. It was Joyce. I wondered if she was having dinner with friends since it was her day off. As I looked at her, I was surprised to see a man of about the same age beside her, happily holding her hand. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and rubbed my eyes over and over again. But it was unmistakably Joyce's face. I wondered what he was doing, but the traffic light on the side of the car was green, and the horn sounded from the car behind me, so I couldn't stop. I was forced to move the car forward and said to myself, Joyce would never have an affair. But I was sure that Joyce was walking around holding hands with another man. Unable to wrap my head around the situation, I parked my car in the parking lot of a large park in my neighborhood and thought alone for a while. But even though I thought about it, I couldn't get my thoughts straight. and I came to the conclusion that I would just have to wait and see how Joyce reacted to the situation. Eventually, when I returned home at about the same time as my usual return time, "Welcome home," Joyce greeted me with her usual smile. "I'm home." I was so much the same as usual that I was a little taken aback. Is there no sense of guilt, or is she able to look like this because there's nothing to be guilty about? But they were holding hands, and there's no reason for grown adults to hold hands unless something suspicious is going on. The more I see Joyce acting naturally, the more confused I become.
Today, Carrie's grandmother sent us a bunch of asparagus, so we've been given a share. It's an asparagus party.
Joyce said happily, heading toward the kitchen. Carrie is a close friend of Joyce since middle school, and since we were in the same club in middle school, I know her too. Oh, I see. I couldn't concentrate on the conversation, and my response was lackluster when she looked at me curiously and said, "Hey, aren't you happy, Davy? You like asparagus, right?" "No, I'm happy. I need to thanks Carrie," I answered in a hurry, but she was supposed to be with a man earlier, so had she met Carrie too? But the asparagus was indeed plentiful. Was it just my misunderstanding, or had she been preparing meticulously to deceive me? My heart ached at the thought of doubting Joyce as she smiled, preparing dinner. I think I still wanted to believe her. In the end, we finished the meal as usual, spending an ordinary day. She was also delighted with the cream puffs, and that was indeed the usual Joyce. The next day, after leaving for work, I texted Carrie, who had given us the asparagus. "Did you really meet Joyce yesterday and give her asparagus? I figured it wouldn't seem odd if I asked like that." The reply came soon, saying, "Yes. I was so happy because Davy likes it." After all, Joyce wasn't lying. I couldn't believe that Carrie, who has a strong sense of justice, would be complicit in Joyce's affair. I decided not to think too much about it, convinced it was just my misunderstanding. Things returned to normal with Joyce, and our tranquil everyday life was restored. I gradually forgot to doubt Joyce and thought that peaceful daily life was back when I saw something I shouldn't have seen again. It was a beautiful day, so I decided to have lunch on a park bench during a break while making outside rounds. I often come to this park, so I usually sit on the bench in front of the fountain. But as I got closer, I noticed a couple sitting there. So I sat on a shaded bench within view of the fountain. While eating the lunch Joyce had made, I thought, it would be fun to eat lunch like this in the park with Joyce. As I watched the couple on the bench in front of the fountain, at the time, I saw something incredible. Joyce, it was so shocking I let out a gasp. Yes, there she was, sitting intimately with an unknown man. She showing him the happy smile I know so well. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but there was no mistaking it was Joyce. In fact, there was no way I could have mistaken it. It was indeed Joyce. While my mind went blank, they got up and walked away, holding hands. Was she so infatuated with that man that she didn't even notice me nearby? Even if she had changed her mind, it would have been easier if she had just told me honestly. Along with the sadness in my heart, a feeling of resentment welled up. Somehow, I finished work and returned home at the usual time. There was Joyce, who seemed to have just returned, saying, "Welcome back. I just got home, so I'll start cooking right away." How could she act so casually? Had she been deceiving me all along, used to lying? "Where have you been?" When I asked, she replied, "Work, of course." Joyce is a clinic nurse and always works on weekdays. I knew that, but she had been walking with a man in the park during the day. It seemed Joyce had no intention of speaking honestly. She was going to deceive me forever. I had enough of Joyce's dishonest attitude and said, "You don't have to lie anymore." Joyce seemed to have no idea what I was talking about and said, "What? What do you mean?" I couldn't play along with her act any longer. I held out the papers I had prepared and said, "I can't believe you anymore. Please leave." In my hand was the divorce form.
What? Why? I can't believe it. What do you mean?
Joyce looked as if she was about to cry, appearing confused. It's amazing how tears come even when you're not sad. I thought that as I looked at her, but I didn't feel like explaining it myself. "Why don't you think about it with your hand on your chest? I'm not coming home tonight." I said just that and left the house. Just a short while ago, we were celebrating a year together, looking forward to our future. I never thought this future would come. With that despairing feeling, I stayed at a nearby business hotel that night and went straight to work the next day. There was no contact from Joyce in the meantime, but a message came in around the time my work ended.
I've thought about it, but I couldn't figure out what made you so angry. I'm sorry if I unconsciously made you feel bad. I want to be with Davy and I want to make an effort for that. So once again, I want to talk face to face. Please contact me anytime. I'm really sorry.
The text was very much like Joyce, conveying sincere feelings. If it weren't for the fact that she was having an affair, I couldn't understand at all how she could still lie after such a betrayal. If she loves that man so much that she can smile so happily, it would be better if she broke up with me. But maybe it's not good to keep running away without talking, even though we were supposed to be a couple who talked about everything. I had calmed down a little and began to think that way. What I saw, what I felt. If I tell her everything, she might be honest with me. But that doesn't mean I think we can live like we used to, given the fact that she had an affair. Thinking that, I replied, "Okay, I'll be home tomorrow." Then Joyce replied, "Thank you," and I stayed at the business hotel I had booked again. The next day, I was a little nervous at work, knowing that I would have to talk to Joyce after work. I had a meeting near the park where I'd been the other day, and out of habit, I went to that park. When I arrived, I thought, I should have avoided this place since it reminds me of unpleasant things. But I had already parked the car, so I quickly headed to my usual bench to eat and go home. When I arrived at my usual bench with my convenience store lunch in hand, there was a couple sitting there again. My heart thumped, and I thought I would lose my breath. Suppressing my pounding heartbeat, I passed in front of the couple and sat down on the bench where I had sat the other day. Then, when I fearfully looked at the couple's faces, it was indeed Joyce. My mind went blank. After being confronted with divorce and crying, apologizing, and agreeing to talk today, there she was, having an affair with a happy face again. I couldn't understand what Joyce was thinking at all. Sadness, anger, various emotions welled up, but perhaps I felt something like fear because the meaning of the actions was too unclear. Then today, the man got up from the bench first, and Joyce was left alone on the bench. I couldn't take it anymore, So I got up and walked over to Joyce. When I grabbed her arm and said, "What do you think you're doing?" She said, "Eh, what? Is she mocking me by using polite language with that suspicious look?" I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" But I realized something was off as I said that. Somehow, she really felt like a stranger. Even though the person in front of me was Joyce, something felt different. "You're not Joyce." When I said that, she looked a little surprised and then said, "No, I'm not." While it could be interpreted as a naive lie to escape the situation, her words gained credibility because the aura surrounding the woman, who had almost the same face as Joyce, was completely different from Joyce's. And, on closer inspection, there were differences like moles under her eyes and on her chin that were not on Joyce. "Oh, I'm sorry." Was the Joyce I saw recently really her? Or was it just today? My head was confused, but it's a fact that I mistook her for someone else. What's more, grabbing the arm of a woman I don't know and shouting at her. I might have deserved to have the police called on me. "I mistook you for someone else. I'm really sorry." I bowed deeply, and she responded with a surprising comment.
Do you, by any chance, know someone who looks very similar to me?
I immediately looked up when I heard those words. Oh, yes. My wife has a face very similar to yours. So I made a mistake. She then told me her surprising story. Her name is Tina. Apparently, she's the same age as Joyce and me and works as an office lady near this park. Tina has a fiancé, and he's the man she was with until just now. They often meet like this on their lunch break because he works nearby. The person I saw in this park the other day was Tina, after all. And the person I saw at the intersection a few months ago, judging from the situation, was also her, she told me. Hearing all this, I was filled with regret. I had mistaken a stranger for my wife Joyce, jumped to conclusions about infidelity without properly listening to her, and unilaterally demanded a divorce. I have to apologize, but Joyce's wounded heart might not easily heal. What have I done? I lamented my actions so much that I forgot Tina was even there. Then, there's one more thing I haven't told you, Tina said. "What is it?" I asked, still in a daze, and Tina said, "I have a twin sister, who has been separated from me." I was surprised again and asked her what she meant.
I was born a twin, but our parents divorced when we were 4, and I have no memories of her since then. The relationship between our parents fell apart, and they divorced, so I never met her again. We daughters were forbidden to meet, and I have lived until now without even knowing if my sister was alive. But I've never forgotten about my sister. I wanted to see Joyce again, and I've lived my life thinking that.
Tina said, tearing up, looking too sincere to be lying. "So does that mean my wife Joyce is Tina's sister?" But I had never heard from Joyce that she was a twin.
So, if your wife is my sister Joyce, it's understandable that you mistook me for her. We really do look alike.
Hearing those words made my heart feel a little lighter. It didn't change the fact that I had hurt Joyce by jumping to conclusions just because they were twins. As we were talking, it was time for both of us to go back to work. So we exchanged contact information and parted ways for the day. I didn't know if I would be forgiven, but I thought I'd apologize to Joyce first, then tell her about Tina, and went home. When I got home, Joyce was there with a worried look on her face. Seeing that expression made my heart tighten, and I immediately apologized. "Joyce, it was my fault. I'm really sorry." I suddenly bowed my head deeply, and Joyce looked surprised. Then I told her everything, without hiding anything, about how I had suspected her of cheating, and about meeting Tina. After hearing everything, Joyce looked bewildered, but first, she said to me,
Thank you for talking to me, Davy. You don't have to apologize. It's my fault for not telling you that I have a long-lost twin sister. I really am sorry for troubling you.
"Oh, no, Joyce doesn't have to apologize. It's my fault for jumping to conclusions. I'm really sorry." We went on like this for a while, apologizing to each other, and finally managed to understand each other's feelings. And then, after a long time, we were able to laugh together from the bottom of our hearts. After that, I heard stories from Joyce about the past. It was exactly the same as what I'd heard from Tina, and I found out that they were twin sisters. Joyce didn't tell me because she wasn't trying to hide it, but because her mother had raised her, saying, "Think of your twin sister as no longer existing." I've met Joyce's mother, so I know she's a very good person. It's hard to imagine her saying such words to Joyce as if she wanted to erase her past completely, but maybe that's how strained the relationship was between the couple. Still, Joyce, like Tina, never forgot her twin sister. She had always wanted to see her, and she cried as she told the story. Seeing her like that, I couldn't just leave her be. So I proposed to tell her mother and arrange a reunion with Tina. At first, Joyce was hesitant, but she seemed determined to follow her honest feelings. Later, we got her mother's approval and arranged to meet Tina. Joyce and I visited the usual park. We arrived quite early, but Tina came to the promised place 10 minutes earlier. They really are twins. Seeing the two of them together for the first time, I thought to myself, and they embraced each other immediately.
I'm glad you look well.
Tina too. "I've wanted to see you for so long," Joyce replied, starting to cry first. Then Tina began to cry almost at the same time, and I thought, they truly are twins. They entered a world of their own, chatting happily, and I was left out. But I was happy to see Joyce's smile, and I knew I wouldn't be sitting on this bench so calmly if I hadn't met Tina. Seeing them so happy together, I felt truly glad from the bottom of my heart. Since then, Joyce and Tina have been meeting frequently, and a few months later, she invited us to Tina's wedding, where Joyce tearfully admired her twin sister's radiant appearance. A year later, when Joyce and I had a child, Tina would visit often and cry with joy. I'm not a twin, so I can only imagine the depth of their bond, but just watching them makes me feel happy. The period when I suspected Joyce of infidelity wasn't a joyful time for either of us. But if it was a hurdle we had to overcome to be happy, it might be something we can say was a good thing in the past.